I'm thrilled to be here and doing this on a Tuesday night. We're going to talk about music, the guitar, focusing in on phrasing and the blues, I thought, tonight, and a little bit of time for Q&A and just to chat and to, hang out a little bit. I'm going to start with some music as soon as I change a setting on my computer here. I thought it would make sense. There we go. I thought it would make sense to just, if we're going to talk about music, I thought it would make sense to play some music. So this is a song called Yellow Home. I wrote this for a trio that I play with under my name, and we put out an EP last year. So this is the title track. It's called Yellow Home. Right. Hey, Audrey. All right. So, that's a tune called Yellow Home. Thanks for listening. And I see a couple folks are here. I'm going to get into it. Thank you so much for being here. It's an absolute thrill to get to be here and to talk about music with y'all, play a little bit. This is the other side. Whoops, excuse me. This is the other side of my world. One side is performing, and I play with Mama Magnolia. I play around town in Denver. I play with my own group. But the other side of my life is teaching. I do a lot of teaching. For the last year, I've been teaching online a ton, and it's something I love, and I'm thrilled to get to share it with the Mama Magnolia folks. I feel like this is sort of a meeting of these two worlds that I inhabit. So thank you for being here. Hey, Lycan, Love you too. It's my cousin from across the country. So, here's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about phrasing and a lesson that you can learn about phrasing from the blues. So we can all learn about phrasing from the blues. This is for non-musicians and musicians alike. So if you don't play an instrument, it's kind of a unique challenge for me because most of the time when I'm teaching, it's folks who are musicians and have paid to be there, and everyone plays an instrument. So I want to make this, hopefully I've structured this to be entertaining for those of you who aren't musicians, informative. If you are a musician at any level, I firmly believe it's never too early to start thinking about this stuff. Whether you are, if you've been soloing for a long time, I think you'll find some cool exercises throughout this. If it's pretty new to you, I recommend writing a bunch of this stuff down. And I'll be giving you examples of exercises all the way through, all variations on the same concept. So write them down and pick one or two that really stood out to you and spend some time with those. That would be my recommendation. So we'll start by talking about what phrasing is and what that means. I'll go through some examples of phrasing as it relates to language. We'll talk about the blues as promised, as advertised, and then I'll talk about some of the limitations of thinking about phrasing and music this way. And over the course of this, whatever hour or so, I'll use 3 different musical examples. So let's check out the first musical example here. Here's my loop. If you are a musician and you care to, this is in C sharp mixolydian, or C sharp bluesy stuff. Feel free to play over me if you want. You don't have to listen to me, but just so you know, that's what this one is. So let me solo a bit in this and just give everybody a sense of where we're at. Okay, so that's the world we're living in. So, let's talk a bit about phrasing. What is phrasing? Well, I love an analogy that I learned from a bass player named Victor Wooten. He's the bass player in a band called Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. He's also a member of a very musical family. And he has this wonderful analogy of, it's not, I'm sure other folks have said this, I'm sure other folks have spoken about it at length, but I heard it from him, that music is a language. So there's so many different ways that analogy can be used to make sense of something musical. There's no words, there's no inherent meaning. It's all something that happens, inside of us. So the way we're going to mess with this today is in the context of a guitar solo, or any solo for that matter. So if music is a language, then a solo, or the melody you make when you solo, is a story. And if your solo is a story, then the sentences of that story are your phrases. And this can be, we can mess with this in a very literal way. So, for example, we could play phrases that are completely analogous to like an English language. We could directly translate. So how about, what's up? And then maybe my answer is, good. Or that would be the socially awkward thing to say. What's up? Good. How about what's up? And then it's like, oh man. Like my car's on the fritz. I'm really sick of the snow. I can't believe it's snowing again. Right? There's like, it gets, I guess, a little abstract there, but you can have single sentences. And I love thinking about this, especially in the beginning of a solo. So think about a conversation, right? What's a way that a conversation might start or a story might start? So this that feels very different. It's a slow, it's quiet, it's soft. That's a very different start to a story than like, that's a boisterous, that you're coming in firing on all cylinders, right? And that's like, I've watched a lot of movies over the last year. And I've noticed that every action movie, there's like, if you watch it from far away, you can see the arc of the story. And at first 10 or 15 minutes, there's always, they throw you straight into the action. There's always like a car chase, a huge explosion, like James Bond is like breaking into the base of the, whatever. So I kind of think of the solo starting like boisterous like that as kind of the beginning of that action movie. It's like you're really throwing the listener in to that story quickly. Like, I don't know, let's see. That's pretty bold as a starting point. I don't even know where to go from there, Again, as compared to something a little softer as a beginning. Another interesting one, I think, especially this has come up for me in the handful of times that I've interacted with folks, strangers in person over the last year. I've kind of forgotten how to, and the idea of a non sequitur has come up a lot. It's like these things pop in my head to say that I'm like, where did that ever originate? So in a solo, if I start a solo with a non sequitur, it's kind of jarring, just the way it is in a conversation. And it's not necessarily bad, but it feels a little uncomfortable to start with. I mean, especially if I choose something less consonant. And try and like recover. It's a little jarring. But a non sequitur in a different context, later in the conversation, can be this wonderful surprise, right? It can be kind of like it can be funny. It can be just like a pleasant sort of change of pace. So if you're taking a solo, I think that's kind of cool. You kind of set it up. I didn't give it a lot of context. I played down low, but then that big note, even the less constant one, let's see if I can work that in somehow. Almost. So, that non sequitur can be justified. It can fit in just the same way it can fit into a conversation. So far, we've been talking about single sentences and the beginning of a story. So we're going to transition now from thinking about one sentence at a time to thinking about two sentences at a time and how two sentences can relate to each other. So I have some examples of this that are, again, very concrete. I'll talk about that in a second. But my mind immediately goes to call and response. This is something that gets talked about by musicians a lot, and I think it's just the coolest. So, for example, let's stick with real concrete. The most concrete example of call and response I can think of is question and answer. So you have a phrase that ends up like a question and a phrase that ends down like an answer. So there's my question. It's answered by that. So I'm going to mess with that for a second. I'll see if I can play really clear questions up and then really clear answers down. Up, down. So I love that as just a really, just as an exercise. Again, this is stuff that if you're a musician, mess around with this one day. Put on a track like I've got on and just see if you can force yourself to make phrases in this box of something that ends up, something that ends down. Another one of my favorites, and I have to just pause and credit, especially because some of my dear friends I'm seeing in the chat, many of my dear friends, some of these folks know this person. So Lynn Baker, shout out to Lynn Baker for imparting this one. I love this concept. I think about it all the time. So from Lynn Baker, we have the preacher and the congregation. This is how he taught it to me. I hope if he's watching, I hope I do this concept justice. And hi, Lynn. So the preacher and the congregation, I love this, and I find myself playing variations on this all the time. So the idea is you have two voices. Professor Baker, you have two voices. One is the preacher, and that's the primary voice. That's the voice that's doing most of the talking, and it's telling a pretty elaborate story. And so you have the preacher preaching. And then you have a congregation that goes, yeah. Yeah, you have these two voices, one that's doing all the talking and one that's just kind of, it's affirming. It's saying, oh, yes, okay. It's doing something kind of repetitive. And the illusion of two voices on the guitar can be fascinating. And it can be something really high. It can be something really low. It could be a repetitious phrase. So let me see if I can show you some examples of those. So I'll try and make them clear as best I can. So I was trying to pick this phrase just to come back to over and over in the same spot that was da da da. So let's see. The phrase can change, the congregation can get more or less involved, but I love this idea, especially if you use the range of the guitar to your advantage. So like, have like low, high, low, high. I just love that conversational element. So, call and response. We have question and answer, and we have the preacher and the congregation. I want to mention here, because I've been dealing with these like concrete examples of like, we have English language equivalents and we're translating into music. And I wanted to make clear that there's a limitation to this approach, right? These are exercises. These aren't sort of, I'm not thinking this literally when I'm playing on stage. If I'm taking a truly improvised solo, I'm not caught up in these sorts of translations, because just like a second language, if you live in translation, you can't be fluent, right? If your first language is English and you're learning Spanish, when you're first learning it, you have to think, okay, what's the word for, I've got this image of a cat in my head. Okay, what's the word for cat? Gato. Okay, so then it's like there's steps, right? Ideally, fluency is the image of cat pops up in your head, and the word that comes to mind is gato. You're thinking in the language, you're living and breathing that language. The same is true with music. So there's a limitation to how direct a line we can draw with these sorts of things. But that being said, it's a great starting off point. Messing with this stuff has totally changed how I play, and has informed, my learning of the language, just the way that if I were doing this with Spanish, I'd, get better at Spanish or remember some of it. Oh, that stuff is gone. Sorry, Mom. I've forgotten a lot of my Spanish. Some of it's still there. Awesome. Okay, let's go over to the blues as advertised. So I'm going to just play a little bit on this blues, set the tone, set the environment, and then we'll dive into some stuff. Okay, well, that's a 12-bar blues. Oh, I should be clear about this. That's a 12-bar blues in A. It's great. I'm gonna warm up into it. I wasn't feeling that blues solo, if I'm gonna be honest, but I'm sure I'm gonna warm up into it. There's so much interesting stuff to pull from the blues, but the first thing I want to do is really clearly demonstrate those two-sentence things in the blues. So check this out. It fits so beautifully in really any musical context. So anything you want to use to work on this idea is totally game. Check this out. So we'll start with question and answer. It's like a classic example, question and answer. Something that ends up, something that ends down. So Preacher and congregation. Okay. I love that phrase. I can't play that without thinking about Chuck Berry. That sound. Anyone else? Chuck Berry? I love that. It's like one of the things I love about the guitar. Just those like waily kind of sounds are just unbelievable. All right. So we can get another incredible lesson out of the blues, and I love this, and I'll tell you this does come to mind on stage. I'll tell in a specific moment. I'll tell you when after I explain the concept. But the thing we can get from one of the things we can get from the blues is baked into the lyrics. So you have a tune like "The Thrill Is Gone." The Thrill Is Gone. So 12-bar blues. You've got 4 bars, 4 bars, 4 bars. So you've got these 3 sets of 4 bars each in a 12-bar blues. And the lyrics in "The Thrill Is Gone" go, "The thrill is gone, the thrill has gone away. The thrill is gone, the thrill has gone away. You know you done me wrong, you'll be sorry someday." And that format of like repetition, I like to use it on the guitar a lot, and I call it the rule of threes. Rule of threes as a concept shows up in all kinds of places, right? It's in joke telling, it's always 3 people walking into a bar. In photography, there's this idea of the rule of thirds. So like if I'm trying to get this right on the stream, it's like if that's about thirds in my grid, like it's supposed to be aesthetically pleasing for me to be on one of the lines of the third. So in music, this works beautifully. The idea is you play a phrase and then you play it again. And you play it verbatim. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but just as an example, when you play that phrase twice, you set up an expectation of repetition. So the listener is thinking that their ear subconsciously is saying, I've heard that before. I recognize that there's a pattern. The third time, you break the pattern. You break the expectation in the listener's ear that the thing's going to happen again. And it's not, again, hard and fast. It has to be 3 times. But if you do it twice, you set up the pattern of the repetition, and you do it a third time, the repetition is getting further and further set in. If you keep going 4th and 5th time, that's when repetition starts to be, it could lose interest, right? The listener having no surprise to sort of feed their interest in the music, it can be disengaging. That's not, of course, there's tons of examples of repetitious music that's amazing, repetitious phrases that happen all the time, but check this out. I think there's something to this. So play a phrase, repeat the phrase, and then the third time you change it. You could even think of it as like a call and response, an extended call and response. So check this out. So let's see. So there's my phrase. And last time. So play the phrase again, and then change it. I'm going to try and do it faster so that there's less gaps in between. Do another one. Okay, let's see. I'm losing the thread. I'm coming back. How about this? of threes, anyway. So when I said that I think about this sometimes on stage, it's something that I sometimes will think about. It's one of the few things that I will actually think about consciously on stage, but it's something that comes into my head, it seems, when I'm having a bad night. You know, musicians talk about like, there's good nights, things feel easy. The notes are just happening, and you're not having to apply a lot of intellect. It's like the next note is obvious. You just hear it, and then you're just in the moment. You're not worried about what you played or what's coming up next. That's a great night. The hard nights, it's everything you play doesn't have the shimmer and the sheen. It's like not, it doesn't feel like the satisfaction, you know? And when I'm having a night like that, sometimes this is enough, thinking about this rule of thirds is enough for me to jumpstart the engine a little bit. I'm just, everything I'm playing, it's like, it's just not quite hitting. And so I'll say, okay, Thomas, listen, play a phrase, anything. And whatever comes out, I've committed already to playing it again. So I don't worry, I don't try and preconceive what I'm going to play, but I just play something and I know that I'm just going to have to play whatever I played a second time. And then the third time, I have something to build off of. You know, there's I'm not starting from scratch. I have material to work with, and then I have something to respond to. And sometimes that's enough just to get me back into it. So again, as an exercise, try and force yourself to come up with something. Don't try and think too hard about it. Don't preconceive it. And then whatever you play, your hands are tied. You have to play it again. So let's see. I'll wait for the top of the form. Okay, that was a long phrase. That wasn't quite it. This actually leads me to the last thing I wanted to say about rule of thirds, and really the last thing I wanted to say about phrasing, which is my favorite, I think I can say this, my favorite exercise, one of my favorite exercises of all time. Probably my favorite exercise to do with students ever. Because it's just, everyone plays something different. I mean, just in general. But with this exercise, it's really put on the forefront. It's really put on display. Everyone's unique voice on the instrument. And it's taking this rule of thirds all the way back to the span of the lyrics, all the way over the 12 bars. So what we're doing is improvising a blues melody, a blues head. So something that like lyrics could be added to. You have 12 bars, 3 sets of 4 bars each. So the first 12 bars, you play a phrase. Again, make it up. Second 4 bars, you have to repeat the phrase as best you can verbatim. So this is a challenge already of like the musical memory. Like, what the hell did I play? And then the third 4 bars, you play a response. And again, I recommend if you're trying this, just like keep it simple. Play a simple phrase because you're going to have to play it again. And I'm going to try and heed my own advice, unlike a minute and a half ago. And I'm gonna do this just a couple of times. So here it comes. Let me give myself a count in. Okay, here's the second 4. Okay, last 4. Let me try another one. I'm gonna jump to the end here. So that's a couple. That's a couple of blues heads. Yes, I just saw in the chat. I did. I recorded these myself. I put them into my. I recorded them as loops into my loop pedal, and then I realized that pulling them up on the loop pedal was going to be really clunky. So I've got them on my computer. I'm playing them off my computer here. Oh, this is awesome. I'm just catching them on the chat. It's so great to see everyone's kind words and everyone's presence. This is so cool. Hey, everybody. So let's see. We've talked about one sentence. We talked about two sentences. And then we just dug into a little bit of like three sentences and the idea of building an expectation and then breaking that expectation. So, just as a final thing, truly final thing, I wanted to put this over some sort of other context. Like both of these things have been kind of like very groove, very blues, but these ideas can work over really any kind of music, and they're wonderful, challenging, creative exercises. So I threw together this track here. This is our last musical environment. Hey, what's up, Colin? Miss you too, man. So this is a ballad. This is a slow tune, and it's just guitar, right? Guitar duo. This is very exposed, and this is very vulnerable as far as musical environments go. But I still think these things can be helpful, fun to mess with in an environment like this. So I'll just go through all the examples, one sentence, two sentences, three sentences, and I'll try and introduce them as they come. So how about Okay, I got off the track there. I'm going to two sentences. I'm going to play question and answer. Well, that ended down. Let's try that again. There's a question. There's an answer. Okay, how about preacher and congregation? Congregation was, and I was trying to play around that a little bit and make the congregation have some surprise as well. A little bit of like, oh, I didn't expect it to be there. I'll do the last one. So the last one was rule of threes. play one more rule of threes that's a little more clear. How about... Oh, it's nice, yeah. One more. Okay, there we go. All right, I feel okay about that. Okay, y'all. There's my 40 minutes on phrasing in the blues. So we talked about what a phrase is, how it's the sentences of your story that you're playing. We talked about like complete straight translation from a sentence into music. We talked about two sentences together, question and answer, the preacher and the congregation. Thank you, Lynn Baker. And then we talked about the blues and the rule of threes. And that's everything. And I guess I'd just like to say thank you again, everybody, for being here and hanging out with me and giving me a chance to like play a bunch of solos and talk about music and hang out with y'all. And thank you, Steve. Good to see you, Jay. Thanks, man. Tim and Derek. My dad's here. Mom's here. Meg, thanks, y'all. I'm glad you dug it. I put in the description, I'm open to talking about really anything. If you guys want to throw out some questions, I'd love to talk about the guitar or music, or I got nowhere to be. So if anybody's got any questions about either what we've talked about or anything guitar related, music related, toss them in the chat. I'd love to chat about them. Kevin, thanks, man. Alex Newton. Oh my God, this is great. Trask, Tyler, Mike. Oh man, you guys rock. I'm just catching up on the chat. I'm sorry I didn't acknowledge you earlier. Hey, Kathy. Hey, Chris. Right on. Thanks, Jackson. I'll give it just like a minute or two here just to see if anybody's got anything on their mind. Oh, Audrey, me too. I was teaching at Swallow Hill. I was doing this class on the Fleetwood Mac record Rumors, and had to end early. So yes, we'll get back to that at some point. Oh yeah, maybe I'll play something towards the end. That's a nice idea. Some of my favorite blues guitar players. Well, my first concert was B.B. King, and he is like the top. I mean, I just adore B.B. King's playing. I talk about phrasing. He's the king of great phrasing. Unbelievable musician and just master of the instrument and of music. There's also a lot of sort of like modern players who use the blues in some really interesting ways. So like Josh Smith is a great guitarist. He's also just an incredible historian of the instrument. So I can recommend, he does some incredible videos talking about the history of all things guitar related. I learned a whole bunch of interesting stuff about Steve Cropper and his contributions to the history of the guitar from Josh Smith. So shout out to him. Yeah. That Jay, this box is a Universal Audio aux box, and it's what's getting the sound into the computer. So it plugs, it interrupts the amp section of the amp getting to the speaker part of the amp. So instead of the speaker being plugged into all the circuitry, this box is plugged into the circuitry. So there's nothing coming out of this speaker right now. And so then it simulates a speaker and then sends the audio to my computer, and that's how it gets to this to the broadcast studio. And this thing's just been awesome. It's been a lifesaver. This was a stimulus check purchase that really really upped my like teaching game setup. And it's been awesome too, especially because I can, I live in a neighborhood. You can see there's another house right there, and I can play into headphones, and it's like I don't have to bother neighbors at all times of night, or I don't have to bother Carrie at all times of night. So it's nice to be able to go into headphones. Mark, great to see you, man. Glad you're here. Hey, David, thanks, man. Let's see. Oh, the jazz scene in Denver is so wonderful. It's an incredible city for music and for jazz in general. There are two clubs in particular that are doing concerts right now that if you are interested in more live streams, I would check them out. Nocturne is doing some great live streams. Dazzle is also doing a lot of great live streams. But, it's been, like with any city, a hard year for music venues and jazz venues. So we lost El Chapultepec. It's an incredible scene, and it's resilient. I've been seeing people playing in the park. People are really trying to get music out into the world again. So as soon as it's safe to do so, we'll all be back out there. Colin, awesome, man. Thanks. Yeah, I've got some ideas for that. I mean, I think, Jerry's he's such a master of the guitar and of phrasing. I mean, he plays just the most incredible phrases. And I think like one of the things that one of the things that Jerry does so well is like if you listen to the beginning of Franklin's Tower, the intro solo on Franklin's Tower, something, it's like almost that, but he does like he uses like all these triad shapes, just like kind of this fantastic motion of triad shapes and arpeggios through his lines, but he also uses like this rhythm over and over in that solo, ba da 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 da, and that becomes like a sequence that moves around, and those things are like recognizing something like that in a Jerry Garcia solo can either be an exercise to like, I'm going to try and play a solo that does that. You kind of break it down to its simplest element. Da 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 da. Okay, I'll try and play a solo on something that isn't like a dead tune, and I'm going to try and use that. But the other thing is acknowledging, that fundamental thing in whatever the solo is, or if you're looking at Jerry's playing, and you recognize something like that, you can also say, like, okay, I'm going to try and play a solo and actively avoid something like that. I think looking at Jerry or Scofield with either one of those lenses would be a great thing. Like one of the things that I got from Scofield, and I'll share this interval I love. So like if you're in A minor, this interval right here between the flat third and then the 9, I use that sound all the time, and it's definitely a Scofieldism. It's definitely something I got from Scofield. But trying to like, again, just my exercise brain, my like create the exercise brain is humming here. So like you could take a solo and just experiment, like where can I put this in? Can I put it in the beginning of a phrase, at the end of a phrase, in the middle of a phrase? Here, like. So here's a little loop. Did you hear that? That was that's the Jerry thing's in my head now. guess the other thing as far as scales is just to think about like related scales that aren't quite the thing. So for example, like this would be a Dorian thing. But what if you played like a melodic minor? It still works, you know? Anyway, there's a couple ideas. Right on, man. Colin, great to hear from you, man. I really hope you're well out there in New Hampshire. And I'm sorry that Colin's an old friend from high school. We used to be in a band together called the Pillbug Light Reaction. And if I if it wasn't far away, I would run and grab the band T-shirt and hold it up for everybody. I still have our band T-shirt that Colin designed, actually. Yeah, I'm sorry we're not going to make it out to New Hampshire for the reunion. Maybe next year. The funk scene in an interview. You know, there's just a great funk scene here as well, and it's sort of there's a mixing of the funk scene and the jam band scene. There's a lot of sort of commingling there, and it's just I don't know. I don't have a lot to elaborate on with that. You know, there's members of Lettuce that live here now. The Motet is a huge band, and they were touring the country, and that's on the big scale. And then on the small scale, like I used to host a jam session that was run by Casey Russell. It's a great organ player in town, and it was Will Trask on drums, and Casey Russell was the band leader, and then Sean Danderand, and then I was playing guitar, and we did a lot of like funk covers, and Casey writes all these great tunes, kind of in that like funk soul world. And there's listeners for that out here. There's people who want to support that, and it's a blessing for us as musicians that there's people who want to come to our shows. So yeah, I guess that's what I have to say about that. Thanks, Audrey. All the best guitarists seem to sing notes as they play them. Yeah, it's interesting. I heard someone talk about that recently. They talked about the difference between singing, because I've sung along a lot to what I play, and it's I've gone back and forth as to whether it's a good habit or a bad habit. But you know, it's singing along to what you're playing or singing what you're playing. Well, what am I trying to say here? Like, there's a sense of being a little bit disconnected from what your body's doing sometimes when you're singing along with what you're playing, because the leading voice is the fingers and what you're playing, and you're physically exerting yourself to play along, when that's one of the advantages of the guitar as compared to a saxophone or a trumpet. We don't need to breathe to play, and it can introduce tension into the system. It can change the way you phrase, either for the better or for the worse, because suddenly you don't have the ability to do one of those guitar-y things that doesn't require, you know, catching your breath. You can play endlessly, and that can be a real advantage. So yeah, you know, I've gone back and forth about whether to sing or not, and I'll tell you, there was a time in my life as a guitarist where I would yell, and I've tried to tame that. So now I kind of sing under my breath a little bit. I haven't let that go. I still like it a lot, but it's something I've been thinking about maybe for the last like 3 months or so. Just something on my mind. Do I want to sing? Like, can I make the choice? And can I turn it on and off, maybe even as a tool? Yeah, we can play all the notes forever. We never have to stop. Favorite instrument to imitate on the guitar: sax licks, piano licks, and sounds. Yes, pedal steel stuff on the guitar, Derek, for sure, man. Like, sometimes at a jazz jam, a song will end and I'll play this. And yeah, it'll elicit usually giggles, which is the intended response because it's so out of place. But I play that all the time as a genuinely, you know, intentional phrase also, because that's a great sound. So that's getting me to an A chord. but bending to that note. Ha! And that's just a cool sound. Amazing, I love that. You know, I've been studying a piano player, actually, Derek. There's a piano player named Barry Harris, and he does a lot of talking about the theory of playing bebop and how to. He has kind of a different idea than I've ever explored in the past about how to make sense of bebop, and that's something I've wanted to get more under my fingers. And so I've been trying to dive into what he's talking about. And he's coming at it from a pianist's perspective. And the incredible, you know, there's so many takeaways from learning from a piano player as a guitar player. But one of the incredible things I've taken from it is taking a single chord, so like say C6, and using that that sound to build what he's calling a scale of chords. So you can use that scale of chords. If you say C6 on a chart, you can play something like... or you can take certain voices of that and move certain voices around within the scale. So for example... something like that. And that's been fascinating for me because, you know, guitar players... we so often think about chords as grips. You know, it's a physical thing. I see C6 and I want to play that. Or I see G and I want to play this. And triads opens that up a bit. You learn triads and suddenly the fretboard starts to open up and you know, like, oh, you've got G here, and you've got G here, and you've got G here, and you've got G there, and you've got G here, you know, and here. But something about being able to voice lead through and make melodies out of the chords has been fascinating to me. So the idea of playing like... where am I going here? There I am. Yeah. So anyway, that kind of stuff has just been fascinating to me. So piano players I've been digging into recently. Awesome. Pillbug light reaction, I know. Derek, thanks for the question, man. Kristen, thank you. Meg, I know I don't need a mic at the shows. I can just be off to the side of the stage playing the guitar. Unless someone at the show wants to hear about triads, we could talk about that. On stage. I'm sure that would be very engaging. Travis, thanks, man. Good to hear from you. All right, I think that's about it. It's been about an hour. And I just, again, you know, thank you all so much for being here, being on the stream, hanging out with me, letting me talk about my favorite subject, music and the guitar. And to share this with you has just been a privilege. So thank you. If you want to support, hey, Lynn Baker's in the house. Lynn Baker on the, yes, exactly, Lynn. So the it's major 6 diminished, major 6 diminished, and the scale is like a you know, has the flat 6 between the 5 and the 6. Hey, that's my bike. First off, amazing name, and the whole stream will be available. I don't know when. I don't know how quickly that happens. Maybe Megan could fill you in on that. But yes, this will be available to watch again very soon, like maybe within 10 minutes. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. That's all. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and please follow Mama Magnolia on all the social media channels. We've got big stuff in the works, and it'll be coming out really soon. Handful of weeks, we've got big news, so please stick around. And next week, we have Alex Kazette and Carrie McCune, I believe. Meg, please tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe they'll be talking about horn section stuff, playing trumpet and sax as a section together, what goes into that, and some tips and tricks, and just some exploration of that. And then after that, the next week, we have a Megan Lutz solo set, so don't miss that. And I believe that's everything. Meg, I hope I haven't announced anything that isn't announced. All right. Thanks, y'all. Have a good week. Bye.